Hi everybody, I'm Adam Baldwin. I'm the Director of Security at NPM, a small JavaScript startup that you may have heard of. So fun fact, 7 years ago, I sent my first pull request to any open source project, and it was to the NPM registry to fix a security flaw. So my open source journey started with that pull request, and then I started the Node security project. And then a few years later, actually earlier this year, February, NPM basically acquired my team at Lyft Security and committed to doubling down on their commitment to security. So it kind of went full circle there by being an open source contributor, my first open source contribution to being acquired by NPM, which is fantastic. And so I have the responsibility of keeping the NPM ecosystem secure, the NPM registry, and its contents. So a little bit about NPM, some stats you may have heard of. If you haven't, they're interesting. We're a community of 10 million users, right? 10 million developers using NPM. Contents of 809,000 packages on the registry. That's 6.6 million individual versions. That's a lot of tarballs. That's a lot of packages. Over 1 billion downloads a day, right? That's pretty significant. And many, many, many users in financial, government, political organizations, militaries, everyone around the world, businesses rely on NPM for their JavaScript. We are the world's supply chain for JavaScript, right? This is where everyone gets their JavaScript. So we have a pretty important role in the ecosystem, right? We have to get and keep this JavaScript secure and get it to you, get you the packages that you want. So now that we've established sort of like NPM's importance in the world, I'm going to talk today about what is threat modeling. I'm going to tell you sort of like how you threat model, and then I'm going to tell you about how NPM fits into that threat model and kind of what we're doing. The new security team at NPM, what are some of our initiatives? What are we doing to mitigate some of that risk so you can have confidence in the code that you're using and consuming from the registry? So threat modeling. Threat modeling is really as simple as when you're going to build something, to think ahead about what could go wrong, you weigh the risks and you take the appropriate action. It's that simple, and it can be as complicated as you want. There's actually a 600-page book on the topic that you can get into. This is what we're looking at with threat modeling, right? If we're thinking about the bricks of that house is like NPM modules, and we build our application, but our application lives in a larger ecosystem. It lives within a business environment, it lives on the internet, it lives within complex systems. And threat modeling is not about finding those code level bugs, such as you would do during a pull request review. Threat modeling is all about looking for design flaws in the greater system, right? Because, and thinking about that earlier in the process rather than later. And we also do this because security is not a binary state, right? We're somewhere between insecure and better than that, but we're never going to be 100%. And so we need to prioritize where we put our effort. What are we going to fix? Is this a valid thing that we should fix? Should we be worried about nation-state attackers? Should we be worried about insider threat? Should we be worried about just some basic vulnerabilities? Where do we prioritize what we're going to fix? Because you're never going to get 100%, and it costs too much to get there. So how do we go about doing threat modeling? Well, luckily enough, you can do it fairly informally. It's like playing a game of D&D, right? It's getting a bunch of people together, right? A diverse group tends to be better, right? And you get those people together, so you want perspectives like security, engineering. The more you know about where the data lives and how the systems are architected and how data flows, and then also having that security perspective so you can know what are the bad things that are possible. That's how you get your start, right? So you gather that group of people, and then you make a list of assets. See, what's important to my application? And it may not be just a piece of data. It may be a functionality, like availability, that you want to maintain. You want to maintain the availability, and so that's something you can consider as an asset of a given system. And you kind of work backwards from these assets, building sort of a graph out of okay, how do we influence these assets? How can I read these assets if they're to remain private? How do I write to these assets, and what other systems do they talk and interact with, and that's your attackable surface, right? Tweets are going off, and this is annoying me. Okay, so next up is the threat actor. These are the people that have access to impact that surface area. That could be just somebody on the network at the coffee shop that you're in, or an employee at your organization. So you identify those actors, and so that's you kind of just making this graph out. And the slippery slope here is, when do you stop? And really, you can stop when you feel like you're done. You feel like you've done a complete and thorough job, because you'll never fully identify all the threats, because no matter how that house, the architect, that built that house, that had the boulder come through, no matter all the planning they did, they might not have ever thought that was going to roll down the hill and go through that property. And then the last step is to identify what mitigations exist, are missing or weak, or and are they in the right place? Are they strong enough? And that is the complete picture of how you do a threat model. And that's just a tabletop exercise. One area that I feel that is, for most development teams, is that they don't have the security knowledge, at least the complete security knowledge, of what all the bad things that can happen. So there's a few frameworks that exist to help you answer those questions. There's one framework called DREAD, which Microsoft stopped using in 2008, but I actually feel is a good set of questions to just sort of ask yourself informally, even if you're just going to start a new feature. How could this be attacked? How easy it is to reproduce, and how much work would it be to launch the attack? Asking yourself these questions is a good also icebreaker for the discussion, right? Just start with these, see where the discussion goes, write stuff down, spreadsheet it, and you'll find those threats. The other one is a little more specific, is STRIDE, and this gives you more specific attacks, such as spoofing or tampering or information disclosure or elevation of privilege. It really narrows down. And again, we don't have enough time to go into all of the details of these. Suffice it to say, you can look up a category of like spoofing or tampering, right? How can we tamper with a package? What is the possibility there? And so again, that also came out of Microsoft. Fantastic set of sort of categories of things to talk about during those discussions. All right, so in general, that's threat modeling in a nutshell. That's why we threat model. That's how you build a threat model. So let's talk a little bit about the NPM threat model, right? Because y'all are using NPM, and so we should be aware of some of the risks of using NPM, right? So let's talk about these first. So what's important in the registry, right? Packages. This is the thing that we're giving you, that you're storing. You're trusting us, with private packages, right? If you're a private package customer, or you're just consuming packages, right? This is the starting point for me, and we want to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability of these packages. So availability, I think, is one of it's the most felt property of security, from confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Registry goes down, you feel it, right? Your private packages aren't available, that's lost developer time, right? So that is a risk. You may not consider it a security risk, but it is a risk to your organization. And NPM Inc. was established in 2014 to really solve that. That was the initial risk that they were solving, right? We want stability so that the registry keeps on being available. We wanted it up and available to give you your packages when you need them. The second, and probably the biggest risk, the biggest threat, compromised accounts. And we saw this with the ESLint scope story recently. Who here, raise their hands, has heard of the ESLint recent incident, right? It's pretty well known. And that stemmed from an account that was, a password was reused, and two-factor authentication wasn't enabled. And the reason why that was so impacting was because it impacted a very popular module, right? We were already using it, and so a new module was published to replace one of the dependencies, and of course, we all use it, so we installed it. That has the most damage of any of the risks for the registry. It can cause the most damage. Also, if you get an account, you can do other things, not just modify a package. You can read public or private packages, publish other packages, manage users on an account, manage tokens, things like that. There's lots you can do when you get an account. Next up, known vulnerabilities. 16% of the published packages in the registry contain at least one vulnerability. It may not be exploitable because you can use modules in many different ways, but that's the statistic. And known vulnerabilities are basically just security bugs that we found, that communities found or we found, and we've added to our database of vulnerabilities, our NPM audit database, and have that available to you. Let's see. And when I ask in conversation what people are concerned about with security risk in the registry, this topic comes up. It's malware. I'm scared of malicious code in the registry. And the reality is that's a much lower risk than a compromised account. Even though the end result was malware, basically this is the type of squatting attacks. And so every so often somebody figures out that they can publish some malicious code. The trick there, though, is that they need to get you to install it, right? Anybody can just publish something. So you have to go then to another level of attack. It's a less targeted attack. It's kind of just a scattershot attack. And so it's a less sophisticated attack. So let's look at kind of a different view, too, of how this kind of tree looks like, right? So you get a malicious package into the registry. It's from an account compromise, an account takeover, just a regular publish, account takeover, as well as insider threat. NPM employees have access to packages, right? By the way, we're hiring, if anyone is interested. Probably the worst time to promote that. Anyway, the security team is hiring, in fact. So another one that is not often talked about is like alternative CLIs, such as Yarn, who proxies all of the traffic through their own endpoint. We currently manage that endpoint, so that is not a possible threat right now. But if they change that endpoint and took it over, because they transfer the tarball and the integrity hash over that same connection, they could modify the contents if they really wanted to. So now you have to worry about insider threat from NPM as well as, say, another organization. And then finally, the last risk that comes up a lot is that we as developers don't often think of, but the larger enterprises think about a lot, which is license risk. Are we bringing in GPL code, but we don't want GPL code, or adherence to internal policies, or the likelihood of bringing a security threat or something like that of a higher critical nature. So compliance is a real risk as well to an organization. And let's talk about, this is the fun part where I get to share sort of the interesting things that we've built at NPM to try to mitigate some of this risk. Talk about our fun programs. So first up, as we identified that account security is really the most important, this is where we put a lot of our focus, right? We've introduced two-factor authentication, not just for user accounts, but for also package maintainers. So you can assert, if you're a package maintainer and have multiple maintainers along your side, you can assert that they have to have two-factor authentication enabled to publish to your package. Right now, 50% of all the downloads are protected by 2FA. Actually, a very small number of accounts have 2FA enabled, but it's those important or prolific authors and maintainers that have it enabled. So that's why so much of that traffic is actually protected. Since April till today, we've seen a 364% increase in the adoption of 2FA. So keep enabling 2FA. If you haven't done it already, please do so. It's very simple, and a little bit of your effort, especially if you're a maintainer, goes a long way for ecosystem security. And then, there's thousands of packages that have that enforcement feature enabled already, and we see that adoption increase every day. Let's see. The other thing for protecting accounts is we've started comparing your passwords against a breach password list. So the Have I Been Pwned project has hashed passwords from all of the breaches that they can gather, and they provide that. And so we've created an API that when you change your password, when you sign up, we protect you against yourself from using a password that you may have reused at another place or that's just weak, right? This is where attackers are going to pull their passwords from. So I don't have the statistics, but on a daily basis, there's constant people trying to use weak passwords, and we're stopping them from doing that, and that helps registry security. So on the topic now of known security vulnerabilities, if you've upgraded to NPM 6 or greater, you're going to have seen sort of some of these notifications in your projects, which is, hey, there's a few vulnerabilities that you might want to check out. When our team at Lyft Security was acquired, the first thing that we did was we built in NSP into the NPM CLI, something I wanted to do for 6 years. And we turned that on for those 10 million users, and we did that for free. We gave you the community feed of vulnerabilities so that you can have security top of mind, and you can fix them with just npm audit fix. And if there's a version fix available, it just fixes your package lock, life goes on, run your tests, security is improved. And for those ones that you can't automatically fix, we're going to give you detailed advisories so that you can learn more about those types of security vulnerabilities and then hopefully avoid also making those mistakes in your code as you work with those technologies. We've got active defense for sensitive data exposure. We read the packages that you publish to us to look to see, did you leak an NPM token, right? Also protecting your account. And if we do find one, we're going to email you. We're going to revoke it. We're going to email you. We're going to let you know that we're here, sort of watching. And I personally hope to expand that to other types of sensitive data, but right now that's what we're focused on is account protection. What about insider threat? We talked about that, right? We are starting to do package signing, PGP signing internally at the registry level, so that limited employees have access to that key. And so if somebody else went and tampered, you could validate that package was what it said it was. And also, once we get verification into the CLI, even if you're using an alternative CLI, you can still verify that did come from the registry, even though you're going through, say, a third-party endpoint or something. And we hope to bring that past just registry signing to developer signing. It's a pretty big challenge given the size of the dependency trees, and we want that experience to be seamless and not clunky, so that may take a while. Finally, we're bringing the security community and the developer communities together, right? We've added a report a vulnerability button on the package pages. That doesn't go to the maintainers like you think it might. That comes to the NPM security team, where we triage those reports and we send those on only if they're a positive report. We might say, oh, that's not a vulnerability because of this, it's not a common case. We give some guidance, or we pass it on to the maintainer to address, right, through the coordinated disclosure effort. Then finally, probably my most passion project is sort of automated threat detection for that last category, which is malware, right? Which is just kind of the cruft that's going to get published. We have systems now that do runtime analysis of the modules as they get published. We can tell you, did it make a DNS request for pastebin? Did it make a network connection to something other than GitHub and NPM? What files did it read? What files did it write to? What processes does it execute? We can tell you all of that about the modules as they get published. That gives us an amazing, combine that with just the context around things were published. We know, we've never seen this publish come from a certain IP address. This is published through Tor. We've got amazing insights and context around publishes that I really want to get in the hands of developers and give you the ability to know if something's suspicious or not. As I said, we're connecting the security community and the developers community together. One of our best assets of this community is that we have those 10 million users that are using these things and that happen to notice, hey, I typoed this and found this suspicious package, and now I'm going to tell you about it. And now then we can take and make signatures, look over the whole registry, and then proactively look and eliminate that over time. It's just some amazing things that we can do with the data set that we have and the insights that we have given the corpus of JavaScript data that we have. So in general, that's some of the things that the NPM security team is doing to mitigate the risks that we've identified, and we're here to help you build amazing things, but do so safely. Please come chat with us at the booth. I've got some nice security wombat stickers to hand out. So, thank you.